Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to English class. I'm OK Haridas from Government Girls Higher Secondary School, Neyatigara. So, we were discussing the poem Lines Written in Early Spring by William Wordsworth. And we have already discussed 4 stanzas of the poem, right? What does the poet try to communicate in the poem? Absolutely. The poet compares nature and man and tries to bring out their contrast. The poet says very clearly that nature makes him happy, but man and his actions make him unhappy. William Wordsworth says, "And much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man." So nature makes him happy, whereas man and his deeds make him unhappy. Have you done all the activities which were given in the last 2 classes? Sent the answers to your teacher and had discussions on them? Yes? Very good. Do you remember the poetic devices which we discussed? Yes, we discussed rhyming words, rhyme scheme, alliteration, and personification. So, what is the rhyme scheme of the poem? Splendid. The rhyme scheme is AB, AB. And we have seen that the poem follows a regular rhyme pattern. Could you give me an instance of alliteration and personification? Very good. What man has made of man is an instance of alliteration where the sound of letter M is repeated. For personification, my dear friends, yes, to how fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran is an instance of personification. I hope you will listen to all the other examples and send them to your teacher. Now, let's move on to the 5th stanza. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think to all I can that there was pleasure there. Let's discuss. The first question to you. Identify the lines which tell us that the budding twigs are reaching out for something. Yes? Marvelous. The lines, the budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, tells us that the budding twigs are actually reaching out for something. The second question to you, what are they reaching out for? Huh? Brilliant. They're reaching out for happiness. So, what does the poet imply here? Or what does the poet try to convey to us? What does the poet try to tell us? Yes? Very good. Maybe the beginning of life, the budding twigs, says the poet. And there is a genuine hope addressed in the poem, in the stanza especially. What is that genuine hope? That all living beings can live happily and freely if they are close to nature, right? ജീവന്റെ തുടിപ്പുകളായിരിക്കാം ഇവിടെ കവി ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. പ്രകൃതിയിലെ എല്ലാ ചരാചരങ്ങളും പ്രകൃതിയുമായിട്ട് സഹകരിച്ച് ജീവിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, ഇണങ്ങി ജീവിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അവർക്ക് വളരെ സന്തോഷകരമായി ജീവിക്കാൻ കഴിയും എന്നായിരിക്കും കവിയുടെ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. Now we discussed personification, right, my dear friends? Pick out an instance of personification from the stanza. Yes? Well done. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air is an example of personification. My dear friends, Look at the expression budding twigs. What image does it create in our mind? Yes, very good, very good. It tells us probably that the life forms in nature are reaching out to experience life, right? So what do poets do? Poets use such images, such word pictures that appeal to our sense organs to make the poem attractive and meaningful. Let's learn more about them. Have a look at the presentation, please.
Let's take a look at what imagery is. Imagery means to use figurative language to represent object, actions, ideas in such a way that it appeals to our physical senses. It can simply mean mental pictures, but it's much more than that. Let's take a look at these lines. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. As you read these lines, some of the words create a mental image, which means it gives the reader an experience of visually perceiving something. It could be an object, a scene, an event, etc. It could give the reader the same experience the poet intends to give. The yellow daffodils, vales and hills, the trees and the lake comes alive in the reader's imagination. And hence they are rightly examples of visual images. Now listen to these lines carefully and check what appeals to you. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The words shaking of bells and the sound of easy wind appeals to our sense of hearing, and we instantly connect to the poem. We listen to the sounds as we read the words, and that's what you call auditory images. Now, is it possible to experience the sense, or let's say smell or fragrance of certain things as we read through lines? Let's pay close attention to these lines now. They silently inhale the clover-scented gale and the vapors that arise from the well-watered and smoking soil. How do the words clover-scented, vapors, smoking soil affect you? The words give us a sense of smell. The odors, aroma and scents come to you through the words. They are referred to as olfactory images. What if you can sense a touch through the words that you read? Let's look at tactile images in the following lines. I remember the night my mother was stung by a scorpion. 10 hours of steady rain had driven him to crawl beneath a sack of rice. The word stung leads us to experience the severe pain. This is a very typical example of a tactile image. Now observe the following lines. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. Now the words there, delicious, sweet, cold, what do they appeal to? Well, these are gustatory images, and they are images that appeal to our sense of taste. So in conclusion, the poets use imagery to give the readers a sensory experience. The images this provide us with mental pictures that appeal to our senses of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell.
Yes. What do we understand? Poets use how many types of images? Five. Five types of images that appeal to our senses. First one, visual, that appeals to our sense of sight. Auditory, yes, appeals to our sense of sound. Olfactory, sense of smell. Gustatory, yes, taste. And tactile appeals to a sense of touch. Now, what should you do? This is activity for you. Please go through the poem, find out examples of various images, and then send them to your teacher. Don't forget to do that. So, we will move on to the last stanza, the final stanza of the poem. The final stanza. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Let's discuss. Now, when we go through the last stanza, we feel that the same ideas were described in one of the earlier stanzas. My dear friends, which stanza is it? Splendid. The second stanza, of course. The second stanza. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Almost the same ideas are described in the second stanza also. They sound the same. Now we discussed personification. Pick out an instance of personification from the stanza. Absolutely, absolutely. Very good. If such be nature's holy plan. In fact, throughout the poem, Wordsworth projects nature as a living being, as a living, breathing world. And he does the same in the final stanza also. He says, if such be nature's holy plan. Now coming to the final stanza again, does the poem end on a happy note or a sad note? Identify the lines which tell us so. Yes? Brilliant. The poem ends on a sad note. Which lines? Yes. Have I not reason to lament what man has made of man, says the poet. So coming to the next question, my dear friends, which expression does the poet use to indicate his sadness? He's very sad, right? Which expression does he use? Yes? Splendid, brilliant, yes. Which expression? The expression lament. What does lament mean? The father was lamenting the death of his infant daughter. So what is the meaning of lament? Yes? Very good, very good, very good. Yes, an intense expression of sadness or a passionate expression of grief or sorrow. Let's go through the last stanza again. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? Beautiful lines. Let's analyze them. What is nature's holy plan? Look at the words used. Holy plan. Nature always has a holy plan for human being. And what is that holy plan? Yes, nature fills everything with beauty, pleasure, and peace. What is the phrase, the next question for you, what is the phrase made in the line, what man has made of man indicate? Look at that phrase, made. What does that indicate in the line? What man has made of man. Yes? Yes? Marvelous. We have gone wrong. Our deeds are not good. Bad, we have wronged ourselves. മനുഷ്യൻ എന്താണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഇവിടെ? മനുഷ്യൻ മനുഷ്യനോട് തന്നെ ക്രൂരതകൾ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടേയിരിക്കുകയാണ്. മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ പ്രവൃത്തികൾ കാരണം ഇനി ഈ ലോകത്തിൽ വീണ്ടും താമസിക്കാൻ കഴിയുമെന്നുള്ള കാര്യം തന്നെ സംശയമാണ്. സോ മനുഷ്യൻ ചിന്തിക്കേണ്ട ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട കാര്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ പ്രവൃത്തികളെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്. അവൻ പ്രകൃതിയെ ദ്രോഹിക്കുന്നു, മാത്രവുമല്ല ആരെ ദ്രോഹിക്കുന്നു? സഹജീവികളെയും മനുഷ്യരെയും ദ്രോഹിക്കുന്നു. So, what does the last answer convey? Absolutely. Nature has only holy plans for humanity. Man, instead of understanding that, his greed, materialism, and selfishness kills nature and its fellow beings. In fact, he has moved far away from nature, far away from nature's holy plan. Instead, he becomes unholy and unleashes cruelty. പ്രകൃതി മനുഷ്യന് ഹോളി പ്ലാൻസ് മാത്രം, നല്ല കാര്യങ്ങൾ മാത്രമേ ചെയ്യുന്നുള്ളൂ. പക്ഷെ മനുഷ്യൻ എന്താ ചെയ്യുന്നത്? ക്രൂരത അഴിച്ചുവിടുകയാണ്. മനുഷ്യൻ ഇത് നിർത്തിയില്ല എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ മനുഷ്യകുലത്തിന് തന്നെ അത് വിനാശകരമായി ഭവിച്ചേക്കാം. Now when you read a poem, you can have your own interpretations. Now please write your interpretations, send them to your teacher, and have a discussion on them with your friends. Remember, write your own interpretations. Don't listen to what others say. When you go through the poem, some ideas come to your mind, write them down, send them to your teacher, and have a discussion on them with your friends. Okay? Do that, please. So we have gone through the poem completely. So friends, which lines appeal to you the most and why? When you read the poem, you may like a line or lines, and you may have your own reasons for that. So write down the lines which appeal to you the most and state the reasons for that and send them to your teacher. Now, let's recap. What do we infer from the poem? What do we infer from the poem? What do we understand from the poem? Yes, in the poem, Wordsworth probably looks at the positive and negative sides simultaneously. And what is the positive side? Of course, nature. Nature fills everything with beauty and pleasure and peace is the positive side. What is the negative? The destructive nature of human forces. Beautifully expressed in the line, what man has made of man, right, is a negative one. So how does the poem end? The poem ends on a sad note, right? Nature makes the best efforts to make the world bright. In contrast, human beings who fail to understand the harmony in nature continue to live in misery. We still hear in our present world, in this world, what Wordsworth says, the still, sad music of humanity. Friends, let's look at activity 3 given in the textbook. Activity 3 given in the textbook. What is it about? To write an appreciation of the poem. So what are the things that we should look into when we write an appreciation? Let's have a discussion on them. Have a look at the presentation, please.
This presentation is intended at helping you to write an appreciation of a poem. Hopefully, after listening to it, you will be able to attempt writing an appreciation. An appreciation is to evaluate and analyze a poem in order to develop a deeper understanding of it. It really does not have a prescribed format, but let's try sticking to a very basic structure. In order to write an appreciation, we need to look out for certain details which are evident or which could easily be observed, and also recollect information that you have already gathered about the poem. To begin with, in the first paragraph, you could write the title of the poem and the name of the poet. You can also include details about the poet. You can then look into the genre or the category of the poem. For example, it could be a ballad, a sonnet, an elegy, a lyric, etc. The next thing is, if there is a rhyme scheme for the poem, you could include it here. We've already looked at how to identify the rhyme scheme of a poem in an earlier presentation. Now, if you observe any kind of pattern, for example, if there is a pattern for the stanzas, you could refer to it as, say, a 4-lined stanza, a 6-line stanza, etc. And if it's a small poem, you could even refer to the number of lines. And also, the central idea of the poem or the theme can come in the first paragraph. Going on to the second paragraph, we can begin by writing a brief summary of the poem. And then we can write about the various poetic devices, including the figures of speech. As you know, a figure of speech is a device used by the poet to go beyond the literal meaning of the words, like a metaphor, simile, personification, etc. You can write about the poetic devices like rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, etc., as it sets the mood of a poem. And then go on to write about how the poet has used the poetic devices to create images in the poem. One of the most important elements is the language of the poem, the choice of words. The words chosen by the poet can reveal the mood of the poem. From the kind of language used by the poet, it is possible to get an idea about the context, the social or political context in which the poem could have been written. So here, the poem is written in the context of the French Revolution. You can also mention the tone of the poem, which could be, let's say, hopeful, mysterious, impatient, etc. The next step is to write about the meaning of the poem. For that, we need to know about the speaker of the poem. It could be the poet himself or some other person. We can thus understand the thought process or the state of mind of the speaker when we write the meaning of the poem. In order to write the meaning, you should also look up difficult or unusual words which might have connotations, associations, or let's say deeper meanings. In the concluding paragraph, you can write whether the poem is written under the influence of any particular social or literary movement during the times in which the poet lived. These movements can have very significant influence on the writings of the poet. For example, the Romantic movement influenced the poets of the early 19th century. You could also write about the contemporary relevance of the poem and also write about why the poem appeals to you in the concluding paragraph. So then, this is how we write an appreciation of a poem. Now we look at a sample appreciation of the poem Lines Written in Early Spring by William Wordsworth.
കവിതയിൽ എന്താണ് നമ്മളോട് സൂചിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്? പ്രകൃതി ദൈവികമാണ്. പ്രകൃതി നല്ല കാര്യങ്ങൾ മാത്രമേ ചെയ്യാറുള്ളൂ. പക്ഷെ മനുഷ്യൻ എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നു? മനുഷ്യൻ മനുഷ്യനോട് ദ്രോഹം ചെയ്യുന്നു, പ്രകൃതിയോടും ദ്രോഹം ചെയ്യുന്നു. കവി ഒരുപക്ഷെ നമ്മോട് ആവശ്യപ്പെടുന്നത് ഈ ദുഷ്ടതകൾ, മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ ഈ ദുഷ്ടതകൾ നിർത്തണം എന്നുള്ളതായിരിക്കാം. പ്രത്യേകം ശ്രദ്ധിക്കുക, അപ്രീസിയേഷൻ ഇസ് നോർമലി ആസ്ക്ഡ് ഇൻ ദ എക്സാമിനേഷൻസ്. ആസ്വാദനക്കുറിപ്പ് തീർച്ചയായും കൃത്യമായിട്ടും അപ്രീസിയേഷൻ എങ്ങനെ എഴുതണം എന്നുള്ള കാര്യം വളരെ വ്യക്തമായിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ പഠിച്ചിരിക്കണം. It's mandatory that appreciation will be asked for 4 or 5 marks. So definitely, please go through the aspects in appreciation quite well. Understand to write appreciation in a brilliant manner. So my dear friends, I hope you have understood the poem quite well. Please do all the activities. Activity 1, 2 and 3 given in the textbook. And I hope you know what activity 3 is. It is to prepare an appreciation of the poem. That is normally asked in the examination, so you need to write that quite well. So please also interact with your teacher whenever you come across a doubt. Whenever you have a doubt, please don't hesitate to talk to your teacher. So stay home, stay safe, wear a mask and wash your hands regularly. Let's wake up to a new world. Bye.